Hello, everyone, and welcome to Growth Stage, a podcast by FastSpring, where we discuss how digital product companies grow revenue, build meaningful products, and increase the value of their business. I'm your host, Jesse Poliato. I support the digital product community as part of my role at FastSpring, and I love being able to hang out with just phenomenal people here on the Growth Stage podcast. And today, the phenomenal person I get to hang out with is Hannes Andersson, CEO at oeksound. And we're going to talk a little bit about how they build a globally recognized brand in this audio plugin space that they operate in, take a little bit of a dive into their journey and their expansion and challenges, opportunities that they encountered along the way. So, Hannes, thank you so much for doing this, man. Really, really excited to hang out for a few minutes with you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Hannes, maybe a good place to start. Could you give folks a little bit of context? Can you briefly describe what oeksound does, especially for people who may not have any exposure to, the audio industry?
Yeah, sure. So oeksound is a software company, and it's a software company active within the music and audio space when it comes to tools that we use when mixing, recording, producing music, or then editing audio in post-production for a film, or maybe even something like a podcast like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a few plugins, is what we're calling them. We call them plugins because they work within these larger software packages that exist, production programs like Pro Tools,
Mm-hmm.
Steinberg Cubase, Ableton Live, Logic, and even GarageBand that we can find on like any Mac computer. And so these plugins are these smaller tools that you use inside of these software packages that you can use then to manipulate or enhance or just better your audio.
And you guys have 3 plugins, or maybe you can just give a quick sketch of what oeksound offers. I think you've got a few,
Yeah.
and maybe a new one. Yep.
Yeah, so right now we have 3 studio plugins. So what we mean by studio is that they're used in more of a studio setting, maybe be it a bedroom producer or a lone podcaster, or maybe a big commercial studio where they make music. So we have 3 plugins called Soothe, or Soothe 2 is the current version of that. Then we have Spiff, and then we have Bloom. And then on the live side, we also have a live version of Soothe 2, which is kind of Soothe 2 quickly became our kind of most popular plugin, and that was the product that really took off for us. And so 1.5 years ago, we released it for live use. That meaning that it's also now being run on shows on, for example, on huge artists like Harry Styles or Red Hot Chili Peppers and those kind of artists. So
That's amazing.
Also being used in that kind of setting.
Yeah. In terms of how you sell them, are they standalone, or is there a subscription side to it? And I ask because for folks that listen to the Growth Stage podcast, a lot of what we end up talking about is sort of SaaS businesses where they're kind of building a subscription model. But I think you might have a few options there, yeah?
Exactly, yeah. So oeksound is actually pretty much a very, very traditional e-commerce business. And so we sell perpetual licenses, and that are perpetual. And I mean, those are every individual product is bought individually currently. We don't have a bundle of any sort. And that's how we've been doing it for a while now. And that's how the plugin industry has been working for most of the time. Subscriptions are mostly, you find subscriptions mostly when it comes to larger companies that might have 30 to 200 products out there. And so there's a large selection. And for somebody that doesn't know where to start, they might just like jump on a subscription and then start using the tools that they need. But otherwise, we have our studio products are perpetual licenses range between $149 and $199. But a new thing that we did last year during summer was actually launch our rent to own pricing, rent to own way of purchasing our products. And that's a very, very popular way, or it's been for us very, very popular. And
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of uh, other companies doing it. There's some availability on a website called Splice, where you can rent to own products. And essentially, what that means is that it's kind of a payment plan, but you never commit to pay the full sum. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can just rent the plugin, but 1 month at a time, making a
Yeah.
payment. And after, I think in our case, after 18 months, then you get your perpetual license and then you own it for the rest for perpetually after that.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped us grow um, from kind of uh, more globally to countries
Mhm.
where, for example, $200 is a lot, and you might not actually need the plugin uh, every month. You might not just need it for an album that you're doing this month or next month. And so then you rent it for 2 months, and then the next time you rent it for 2 months. And then after, let's say, multiple years, you get a perpetual license when you've gone through that 18 times.
That's amazing. Like what a very thoughtful sort of win-win scenario for people using, like you said, where they get to use it when they need it, but as a company, you get the full kind of value that you need out of the purchase eventually. Like it's timed
Yeah.
out. I know, there's companies that provide sort of this payment plan option. Klarna does this, Affirm does this, and buy now, pay later is the phrase that is often used in the industry for that. But that comes with, finance charges and you're committing to the full purchase up front. So it's very interesting. So like when you guys are doing this, is it the same price? Like if it's a $200 plugin, and I do the payment plan, does it become a $250 purchase at the end of the day, or you're kind of covering that financing cost yourselves?
We're covering that finance cost ourselves to the most part. The end sum gets for the customer, the end sum might be somewhere like $5 more, five, seven
Mm,
dollars more.
yeah,
So it's pretty close to the original sum, but so we just made sure that at least at the rent to own price, you don't get it cheaper than for the full price.
right.
But but
Yeah,
then
yeah.
again, we wanted it to be as close as possible to the full price, and that has a lot to do with how kind of our ethos work
Mm,
with our plugins. We are very confident in how good our plugins are and
yeah.
that they're useful and that users find them useful. And also, if they don't find them useful, then I don't see any need for our users to buy them. And
Hmm.
just like having that as the ground rule, make something useful and sell it. And if it's not
Yeah.
useful, then we're gonna know about it. And so, for
It's funny how
example,
how
yeah, go
like
ahead.
that can sound almost like obvious when you say it out loud, but unfortunately, there are things that I'm sure all of us have bought that you're like, why did I buy this? This sucks. Like, this was not worthwhile. It didn't actually do what I thought it was going to do. So it feels, I know what you're saying sounds like this should be obvious, but it actually is like to hold yourself to the standard that we're going to sell something that's so good that somebody is glad that they paid us for it. Like, that's a pretty cool standard to be living up to.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because you see a lot of kind of race to the bottom pricing
Hmm.
wise in the industry going on right now, and that kind of I I feel a bit unsure about what that communicates about
Hmm.
the company behind the pricing when, for example, you see something like a bundle costing something like $899 and then it's like crossed over and now you get it for $40 or something.
Yeah.
When I see that and am I supposed to am I like supposed to be happy when I see that? I'm
Yeah.
not. Like, yes, that is a good deal, but why would anyone buy that for $899 to begin with?
Yeah.
Then either your products were never that valuable, or they were
Right.
actually never that useful. They were never actually that worth it, or then you've kind of like I don't know. There's might be
Or
some
they
on.
were, and why are you marking it down to $40?
Yeah, yeah. And so kind of having all of that. And I think also something we started off with our plugins and with our products is that they all have 20-day trials, and these 20-day
Mhm.
trials are just they're not restricted in any other way that they're gonna stop working at after 20 days. As so
Yeah,
you get all the features that the plugin has, and you can use that plugin. So, for example, if you're a professional mixing engineer, you can actually use the trial to make money
hmm,
during the trial, so that you can then invest and get the plugin if you like it.
yeah,
And so, having that honest, extremely transparent and honest discussion with the users of here is the plugin, you can use it for 3 weeks and decide if you like it or not, if you find it useful.
yeah.
You can tell us, you can let us know if you don't understand it or if you do understand it, because we are all at different levels when it comes
Hmm.
to users. You can be a super pro user and still don't understand how it works, or you can be a bedroom producer just starting off and getting immediately what it does. There's so many different users available, but one thing that I like always to kind of repeat is that our customers are not stupid. They're never stupid in any way.
Yeah,
We don't have to ever tell anyone why they should kind of buy our plugin, but we could tell them why they should try it. I mean,
yeah.
and then every single user is gonna make a purchase decision on their own. We're never gonna have to tell anyone, and we've never actually in our marketing we've never asked anyone to buy our
Hmm.
product.
Really?
Yeah,
It means to try it, right?
I don't actually think we've ever used the word buy now or something like that as a
Yeah,
call
yeah,
to action or something like that. I think of course, when we have a sale, we direct people like, we have 2 sales a year.
yeah,
And so, usually Black Friday and then a spring sale around spring. That's usually how we do it, but we never know like if we're going to change it up or if we're going to something different, but that's been kind of the way we've done it so far. We let people know, people that are on our mailing list 2 weeks before, that we're gonna have a sale. So if
yeah,
anybody's been waiting around, that's usually the only reason why why they're on our mailing list, is to know if we have any new product or when
yeah,
there's a sale. So
yeah,
and then we tell everybody beforehand, and then they take care of telling everyone else. Like word of mouth is everything in this
yeah.
industry. It's like 95% of the marketing is done word of mouth, and after that, they just kind of uh, that's like the only time where we say, okay, here's the
Buy it.
link where you can buy the plugin for this price now. And so you kind of like that's because it's a sale. Of course,
Yeah, yeah.
now it's about buying it, but that's something we do twice a year, and then we're back to our normal programming.
I love that in terms of like leading with value. Like we're gonna just give you value. And for folks listening who may not have kind of ever worked in sort of the creative side of software, my exposure is that limiting the ability to export final products was always like the trick to get you to, oh, try the creatives, whether it's photo or drawing or music. And then when you finally create something and you want to export it, now we're going to use that as the hook to force you to pay us money. Like, oh, you actually want that track exported. And so to actually give them full use is a big deal, but it does lead with value. And it strikes me that it creates, it builds it into a workflow, which is very important. I would expect for this user base is that they're creating things. And so the ability to create tool chains of software that work. And if it works, then you're built in going
Yeah.
forward. Now I want to buy it because I have a proven workflow that created a great thing. Is that a fair
Yeah.
analysis or
Exactly. So a really good example is we talk about something like vocal chains or master
Mhm.
chains when we talk about these tracks, these audio tracks that we have in our software. So a vocal track is obviously a track where you have your recorded vocal. And
Mhm.
then you put these plugins on in order to make that plugin, that vocal sound professional and make it sound ready for the radio or ready for the streaming service where you're going to put it. And so there we have our plugins, but also plugins from probably 20 other different companies.
Yeah.
And so they're constantly changing out these tools that they have there to get to a better result than earlier. Every single engineer
Yeah.
is constantly tweaking and constantly changing out things there. And so when they trial our product, our plugin, put it there, maybe at the end of the chain or maybe at the start of the chain, and then they understand, or they kind of like, yeah, get to the point where it's like, oh, this is actually better than before.
Hmm.
And then after a while, let's say after 3 weeks, they open up a project where they have used it. And then that's when they're going to notice that, okay, whoa, my trial has expired here. And
Yeah.
then that purchase decision is going to feel so natural. It's
Yeah.
going to feel like a no-brainer for
Yeah.
them at that point because, hey, I've already used it on like 2, 3 tracks, and I
Yeah.
know I'm going to use it again. This is an obvious purchase decision. And that purchase decision, especially if it's done at full price, for example, which is not common in the plugin industry, that you like ever buy something at full price, but our plugins do sell a lot at full price. What I find, or what I believe, is that um, you get a user that is so proud of their
Hmm.
purchase.
Yeah.
They feel like they have made an investment because it's already in their workflow, so to say. It's already part of their toolbox, and they're really happy about the decision that okay, I'm actually know that I'm going to need it. And then when you have that kind of a user, that kind of a customer, they're going to tell everyone.
Yeah.
So again, word of mouth. Again, we have the perfect customer. And again, if you compare that to somebody that sees an email that says flash sale today only, and then
Yeah.
there's usually a timer that says like 72 hours. I don't know how that's today only. And then
Multiple, I don't know. Multiple
yeah,
time zones? No, I don't know.
maybe. And
Yeah.
then they buy it during that flash sale. They've never seen that plugin before. They
Yeah.
use it once in their in their project, don't understand it, don't understand the
Yeah.
value. It might be a super product, it might be great, but they just don't put it on the right place or don't use it right. And then they feel bad about the plugin. And so next time they're in a room with other engineers or they're hanging out with other music creators, somebody goes, "Hey, have you tried that plugin?" And they're gonna go, "Yeah, I tried it. I actually bought it. I no, it
Yeah.
don't
You're
use
going to
it."
get negative word of mouth because
Yeah,
the experience was so bad with it.
yeah. And compare that to, oh, so do you use Soothe? It's like, yeah, I use Soothe. I actually bought it like a few months ago. It's on every track.
Yeah.
Love it. I recommend it to everyone. Like that's the difference. You have two completely different customers, but I think the other plugin probably also deserves a chance. It's
Right.
just that that funnel has become so like kind of like FOMO based
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
that you just try and grab do a, yeah, it feels more like a money grab, and then
Hmm.
if you like it or not, that's up to you as the user. You're not giving them a chance to even like question you.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of sort of the age-old wisdom that people value what they pay for, and they don't value stuff that's free. Like, which is, I remember hearing that as a kid. Like, I could give you this, but you're just going to throw it away. If you got to save up your money and buy it, it's a bike or something. Like, then you're gonna be super proud of it, and you're gonna show it off. There's almost like a personal investment, which. The other thing that was striking me while you were kind of describing that is the picture in my mind a little bit is of like somebody who builds things with their hands, like they're building furniture or something, and they have all these
Mm.
tools. And a big part of those tools and what they choose to buy is their ability to successfully use it. And so, kind of, it's not just I bought this thing as a status symbol. Like, no, I bought it because I actually have to learn how to use this thing to make cool stuff at the end of the day. And so, you're kind of building the learning pattern too at the same time, which kind of stands out
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah, exactly. And we're trying to make that as easy as possible. We also, so both Soothe 2 and Spiff has uh, they have both integrated tutorials. So what
Mm,
that means is kind of like this is something you might see in SaaS, I mean SaaS websites, right? So you have
yeah,
like those pop-up screens that let you show, and then you might have a test project going on and stuff like that. That's not something you see within a plugin within a DAW. That's
yeah,
something very unique, but we have that going on, and so you can open up a small tutorial that is going to go through the parameters for you. And then you also have some test audio material running through the plugin that
Yeah.
you've installed together with the plugin. So kind of
Yeah.
like you have some demo material in a way. So,
Yeah. To kind of
I
get you
mean,
started. Yeah.
yeah. So that way you don't need to read the manual. You don't need to go to YouTube and watch some videos and get stuck in a rabbit hole on YouTube. You can just stay within your DAW, within your project, go through the tutorial, and when you're done, you're back where you started, and you're still in your own project, and you're still
Yeah.
using our plugins on your music. And so that's something very unique in the plugin space, even even though that's something we pretty much took from, again, yeah, something more like the SaaS
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. Just to quickly ask, you said something a couple paragraphs ago that was interesting. How many? You said there might be 20 pieces of plugins or software on a given track that you're working on. Is that the right number? I'm curious, like if I'm a music producer, and I realize this is a hard question because there's everyone from bedroom producers to professional, working on,
Mm,
Taylor Swift level kind of
mm.
producers. But how many plugins or pieces of software are on a given song or album?
Yeah, I think on if we start from the track level,
Hmm.
um, I think in Pro Tools, like the default number of inputs that or kind of like plugin inputs you can have there is like 5 + 5, so 10.
Hmm.
Um, so usually if that audio track is well recorded material and you're
Hmm.
not in a genre where you have very overprocessed material, then you're gonna be fine with an EQ, an equalizer.
Hmm.
And that might be the only thing you have there. Another thing is usually you go for something like EQ compression, and maybe saturation or distortion, and then you have like three. But I'd say kind of like when you go for when you have those more, let's say, music tracks, the instruments, and those tracks,
Hmm.
you might have somewhere between like 1 and 5 plugins. And then when you have your most important tracks, like a lead vocal, for example, like the
Yeah.
main vocal that everybody is listening to, then we're probably up. Uh, if we say the genre is pop or EDM, then you're
Yeah.
definitely going to have like 7, 8 plugins on that. And also that track being sent to some buses that also have the reverbs and the delays and everything like that. So there you have five, maybe some parallel tracks as well. So there you have 5
So
plugins,
on
and
a
then
given song, this is all multiplied, right? So there was the 5 on the one and the 5 on the
yeah,
other, and the 7 on the
yeah.
vocal.
So
Oh, yeah.
in a production project where the producer has produced a track, you're definitely going to find, let's say, I don't know, 80 plugins and on a track, on a pop track, and
Yeah.
then that already gets like committed, and so you kind of like print the tracks as they are, and that goes to mixing, and the mixing engineer adds 40 plugins more. And
Yeah.
so this is just the way we manipulate audio. If we
Yeah.
are not editing it, so like just cutting and pasting and copying and doing stuff like that, doing our fade ins and fade outs. The other way we process our audio is with plugins. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of the main way that we go about. And so yeah, we can have anywhere from like 20 plugins to 200 depending on the project. And don't get me started on cinematic projects like for film, for cinema, because
Oh,
those
yeah.
projects might have, if it's for a whole film, feature film, you might have 2,000 tracks.
That's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Well, so let me use this as sort of I'm gonna use that as a turn into a little bit different sort of question. So obviously a lot of competition in this industry, right? Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
plugins out there. It's not like there's 5 main ones and that's what everybody uses. I mean, maybe there are 5 popular ones, but there's a lot out there. Um, and I believe you guys are based in Helsinki.
Yes.
Um, and so how did the company and how did it think about going global? Because if I'm creating software, I'm in Helsinki, and I want to suddenly take this to the world. There's a lot of other plugins that people can pick from. How did you get started, and how did you do that? I know that's a very broad question, so please,
Mm.
feel free to take that wherever you want to take that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can start really shortly talk about the history. Um,
Yeah.
so the company was founded by Olli Keskinen, So he's a dear friend of mine. We were both studying at the Sibelius Academy. We were studying music technology. So we were both becoming recording engineers, mixing engineers in
Oh,
that
right on.
sense, or was at least dabbling in that. And yeah, got to do that a lot. Olli made the first version of Soothe pretty much on his own. Like that's a solo project. And not only did he make the plugin, but he also made the website. He made the web store, so that was like uh, WordPress, WooCommerce based
Mhm.
store back then.
Yeah.
And he also made the copy protection for the plugin back then. And that's
Okay.
both the store, of course, is FastSpring now, and then uh, the copy protection is also done by another company that we implement their technology into
Yep.
our plugins. But yeah, that was all made by one person in November
Wow.
2016. And then we're not in the plugin industry, or I guess in the software e-commerce side, you're not thinking about going global. Anything is by like start, by
Yeah.
default, it is global.
Yep.
Uh, and so he started the web store and he loaded up the plugin, and then he just wrote something on one of the more popular forums in the audio space and said that, hey, I made a plugin. I hope you like it. Here you can buy it, and here you can download and try it.
Yeah.
And then it took off from there pretty fast for a single plugin done by a single person. And so
Hmm.
pretty quickly he understood that he should be focusing on squashing the bugs and making sure that the code is good. And so I jumped on the business side, on the marketing side, or mainly focusing on marketing, getting more people to know about it.
Yeah.
And Tommy Grön as well jumped on as another DSP engineer, is what we call it, so digital signal processing. And
Huh?
those are kind of like where all the code starts. It's the algorithms that do the processing for the audio. And so we became kind of like the core team, and now we are now the partners of oeksound. But that's where, I mean, my how it started for me was actually just cold emailing, reaching out to Grammy-winning engineers, and a lot of them answer. I mean, they're not. I mean,
Yeah.
engineers are not that kind of. They're not that secluded, and they're
Hmm.
a lot of them like when people reach out to them, and especially like when somebody has a plugin that they haven't tried before, because we're all
Yeah.
geeking out about plugins. And so
Yeah.
and so in a way, that's just like kind of shows that we were all musicians, recording engineers, mixing engineers, and just kind of had we were all users of this plugin as well. So
Hmm.
reaching out and just getting to geek out with other people about the plugins that we have was the best kind of marketing. Again, word of mouth, getting the word out there
Yeah.
was the way I went about it. And then at some point, we released Spiff, so our second plugin in 2018. We grew the company up to about 6, 7 people.
Hmm.
And then Soothe 2, we released in 2020 before COVID really hit.
Hmm.
So that kind of like there was a lot of things happening there. Obviously, COVID was good for software. COVID was good for music in
Right.
general. When it comes to the business side, horrible event. So all in all,
Yeah.
but
But yeah,
just
so many people had to invest in tools, and so many people were making
yeah,
music at home because they couldn't go play the
yeah,
gigs.
exactly. They were making music at home. They couldn't go to a commercial studio, and so they were recording in their bedrooms. And something that Soothe, for example, was pretty much made for was to make cheaper microphones sound more expensive,
Hmm.
cheap rooms sound more professional, and all of that. So it kind of
Yeah.
it got released and came out into the world at the perfect time in that sense. And so Suit 2 was for us the plugin or the product that really, really took off and put us on the map. And after that, it's been crazy. Everything changed after January 2020. And
Yeah.
that's when we also understood that we need a better partner on the e-commerce side, and not maybe like trying to do all the e-commerce side ourselves with
Yeah.
taxes and everything. And so that's when we started to look for other partners there and found FastSpring. So that's
Was there any particular headaches that you ran into, or was it just you could see that it would help in the future, or was there specific pain points where selling, like the popularity that surged, did it create kind of growing pains? Or
Yeah, definitely created growing pains. I think bookkeeping was, for example, just keeping books clean on like
yeah.
the different countries and having that going on correctly. It's just having pretty much we were we couldn't focus as much on the marketing side when there's a lot of like technical things that you need to take into
Hmm.
account and bureaucracy and legal matters and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so it was, and just like we're a small company
Yeah.
and especially back then we were a small company where most of the the founders or the partners are pretty young, and like I haven't worked at another company in my life. This is my
Hmm.
kind of first company, and
Oh,
so
right on.
it's in a way it's not like we had like a consultant or a CEO just that have started like four different companies before. It's say like, yeah, this is just how you do it. I mean,
Yeah.
and we never were a startup either, and so we've never thought like a startup. We've never had the kind of like the startup uh, way of thinking, and so we
Yeah.
were always just like this artisan plugin company making these tools. And so I think what I remember now, it's all a bit fuzzy just because of how fast everything happened.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Um,
Yeah.
I think it's just we needed to be able to handle scale,
Yeah.
uh, and needed to be able for our customer support as well to be able to handle orders correctly and fast, and something that also would work with our licensing system
Oh,
because
yeah.
oeksound and our licenses are handled by a third party in a way,
Hmm.
and then Fastspring. So there's always this kind of like trinity
Yeah.
of actors when somebody buys a plugin or a license to use our plugins. They buy it from us. They get a license, an
Yeah.
activation code that they activate with Pace, with iLock, it's called,
Uh-huh. Yep.
and then that's what they receive when they've made the transaction over Fastspring to us.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, there's always that going on. So it's a bit of a complicated system, but again, it's perpetual licenses, so it's one transaction for most, and then rent to own, of course, then makes it again a bit more complicated.
Yeah, but I can imagine you start making decisions like, am I putting my developer time into solving that triangle of software integration, or am I building the next, Soothe, or improving the next feature or whatever? And so it sounds like a bit of it is sort of just optimizing what do we spend our time on versus what
Yeah,
do we outsource to, a partner who can potentially or hopefully solve it for us.
exactly. Yeah, and to not have to worry about some percentages being off when it comes to VAT or something like that, and not having to keep track of it that often at least.
Yeah.
And I'd say as well, most of our the sales we do is kind of B2C. I mean, there's a
Hmm.
customer, but that customer is often as like solo owned business.
Yeah.
And so it feels like B2C for most parts, but it might be that it's B2B. And that's why always
Yeah.
like it's like a lot of customers that's always going to write off the VAT. They might have a code for VAT in Europe, or then some other company ID for tax purposes. And then there are also B2B customers. So
Yeah.
large companies like game companies or movie companies
Hmm.
that are actual businesses that want to buy um, in larger volumes, for example. And
Oh, right.
so I think that's something we've noticed with Fastspring, that it doesn't matter. There's going to be a possibility. We have the tools through
Yeah.
Fastspring to offer what the customer wants, and also to keep that funnel as clean as possible. That's always been super important for us, is that we're not using an account. We don't have accounts. We don't have oeksound accounts for our
Hmm.
users, which is pretty unique as well. Usually
Yeah.
for a lot of software companies, you need to log into your account in
Hmm.
order to make a purchase and something like that. We thought since you've already trialing our product and you don't have an account for trialing our product
Yeah,
as
right.
well. And so when you make the purchase decision, we're trying to be by all means not be in the way for you
Right.
to make that purchase. So kind of like when you're going through the purchase funnel, get out of the way. You as a
Right.
company need to get out of the way, and you need to just make it as easy as possible for a customer, for a business, for
Hmm.
to make a purchase, to make a volume purchase, to make a purchase with a VAT code, to be able
Yeah.
to add your address or whatever you need there. And it should just be so seamless and like simple so that
Yeah.
that happens without doubt. It feels like because we've been super transparent up until that point, so we're not gonna ask
Right.
you to kind of like, oh, you want to buy our plugin? Well, first log in, and so you can see what kind of coupons you have in your account. No, no account, no coupons. The price you
Yeah.
see is the same price for everyone. You don't need to worry that somebody else gets a better deal,
Yeah. Right.
and you just go through it, and then you have it, and then you get on with your life and you get to mix more music.
I love it. I can't tell you how many times I have stopped because you go to buy or to do a trial and you're in it and they're like, "Oh, quickly set up your account." I'm like, "I don't got time for this." And I'm in my head I'm wondering like if I set up the account, are you going to remember what I was purchasing? Is the cart going to stay
Yeah,
permanent through my exchange or
yeah,
am I have to start back over on the homepage? Figure like forget it. And I just move on. Like that's so smart. Like reduce as
yeah.
much friction and just
And
allow
if
the
you
purchase
and
to
also
happen.
all of that, like if you sign up to our newsletter, you get a 10% coupon, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, so there's coupons involved as well. Well, is there a 20% coupon somewhere?
Yeah.
And then I go to Google and then I try to Google out like, okay, where can I get a 20% coupon and and
Yeah.
and stuff like that. It's just like it makes it such a gray area, and it doesn't feel it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like you're treating the customer correctly because it's yeah, it just yeah,
It's
it should be it.
interesting. I don't hear people talk about that a lot, and it may just be me missing it. But like that's very popular with retail sites, right? Like clothing stores or something where, sign up for the email and you get the pop up, get 10% today
Mm,
signing up. And what you're introducing is cognitive load
yeah.
to somebody who's in a purchase funnel. And it's not like typically in the digital world, we tend to think in terms of there's more clicks and that's friction, or creating the login is friction because you have to think of a password. But
Mm,
just the question I asked myself of, wait, am I getting the best deal? That's friction. And so, yeah,
yeah.
you're reducing sort of that whole kind of internal
Yeah.
slowdown.
Yeah, yeah, and that's actually funny that you mentioned that because you can actually trace that back to the way we develop our plugins. So
Mm,
plugins pop up when you make your music, they pop up in a separate window
hmm.
in front of your track, and then you adjust your parameters and then you close the window. Now, for many sites and for many let's say content on social media, they kind of count how long the user has spent with that content, and that's positive. I mean, the
Yeah.
more time they're on a site, the better,
Yeah.
or something like
That's
that.
quote unquote engagement. And that's what everybody wants in order. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's completely the opposite for a good plugin, right?
Mm,
When you know how a plugin works and you're mixing music, you want to get to an end result fast.
yeah.
The shorter while you have open our plugin and it
Yeah.
stays on, it's not in a bypass state after you close it, so it stays on. So
Yeah.
if you open a plugin, you spend, let's say, average 7 seconds
Yeah.
like looking at it, and then you close it. That's good. Like that's amazing if you spend a little time on it. And I think the same way you think about, okay, now I've used the plugin and now I want to purchase it. Again, the shorter time it takes for that person to make
Yeah.
person to make that purchase, the better, right? Because they want to get back to mixing music, right?
Yeah.
They don't want to spend time in their browser. They don't want to start questioning like if they're getting the best deal possible. They want to get
Yeah.
back to making music.
Especially when if they're going to have 200 plugins they're using on this
Yeah,
track. Like, I don't want to do this 200 times.
no, this is
And
just a plugin. Exactly. This is not like we're not changing the world here with what we're doing. We make kind of like really flashy toys in a sense, but they're super good tools.
That reverse metric on engagement is funny. It takes me back to the analogy of like somebody building something with like physical tools.
Mm,
Like the tool that I like the most is the one that if you tell me, "Oh, Jesse, here's this tool for building stuff with wood," and every time you use it, it takes an hour to set it up and it takes an hour to clean it. You guess what? I'm never going to use that tool. The one that
yeah,
like does it fast and I can just keep building, I'm going to use that every time. It's
yeah,
an interesting sort of reverse metric from a lot of marketing funnels where yeah, engagement is the
yeah.
currency.
Of course that's different if the tool is the thing you're doing. I mean,
Yes.
if I'm sitting down and I decide that today I'm gonna explore plugins, then of course I will spend time with plugins because I'm not
Hmm.
working on a track. I don't have a client waiting for me to send over a finished version. I'm not getting paid by the hour when I do that. And so in that sense, if it makes sense. I mean, if you buy a golf club, the more time you spend using that golf club, the better, of course.
Yeah, true. Yeah, really good
But
point.
because that is the hobby, that is the thing you're doing. And
Yeah,
that's the same thing with an instrument then as well. I mean,
yeah,
if I buy an instrument, the more time I spend using that instrument, the better probably it was for me. It was a good purchase. But for a
yeah,
tool that's there to kind of like get to the end result, it should not be in the way. It should just do its job and get out of the way.
yeah. It really you have to understand the user journey or the user story. And maybe can you talk for a second? Before we started, we kind of talked for a second around the idea that you guys are your own audience.
Mm,
And can you just go back to that, like about
yeah.
how you guys use your own stuff?
Yeah, and so I think I actually bought Soothe before I started working with Olli, which is really
Okay.
funny
Yeah.
because I needed it. Like it
Yeah.
was a good tool and I needed it for my own music or for the music I was making for artists. And so that really shows kind of where where the core is at the company. I think everyone dabbles in music in some form at
Hmm.
oeksound, be it in recording or mixing when it comes to engineering, or then producing music, playing music, or then DJing, or yeah, just
Yeah.
being having something to do with music. And so a lot of us use our tools um, at least at a weekly basis, use our own
Yeah.
plugins, and we also use all the let's say competitors' plugins, even though we don't like to think of them as competitors. They're just other plugin companies that
Yeah.
whose tools we like. And
Yeah.
then so that's always present when developing a product. Everything we do starts in product development. All marketing starts in product development. All kind of ethos starts in that's it's not a separate thing in any way. When we start
Yeah.
thinking about a plugin, a new plugin, or an upgrade to a plugin, uh, everybody's involved. Everybody's
Yeah.
involved in what is it, what it's going to be, what is it going to do, who is it for, and because it should be for us, like mainly the
Yeah.
plugins we do for ourselves. We do take a lot of feedback. We do test it uh, with users, have user testing, and have alpha test and beta test and everything like that. But if we don't like the plugin when we're done, we're not releasing it.
Yeah.
I mean, even though everybody else would say that it's amazing, we still need to understand it ourselves because it's really difficult to market something that you don't understand.
Yeah, that's such a superpower to be the audience. I can imagine there's maybe complications there, but especially like in the B2B SaaS world, I think that can often be a problem where people
Mm,
aren't using the product in their day-to-day lives. Especially if that's not their, if you're selling whatever, in my world, it would be sort of marketing tech. But
yeah,
if you're somebody who's not in marketing and it's a B2B software, it's very hard to figure out like what are people actually doing? But there's such an intuitive knowledge, I would guess, on kind of the OX Sound team, where you guys are like, no, this is how a producer uses it because I just did that yesterday, and this
yeah,
was the problem I had.
exactly. Yeah, it's so, and I love having those conversations with users where I can just go up and ask like, hey, so what do you do? Are you an artist? Are you a producer? Are you an engineer? And
Hmm.
then we talk about it. They tell them where they're coming from, what kind of music they make, how they like to work, and what their workflow is. And then I can just immediately be like, oh, that's great. I do that. I do that as well. that's something new for me. Do you mind telling me more about that? Oh,
Yeah.
this is where I see our plugins come in. Like when you do that, you
Yeah.
might want to try this there or
Yeah.
this there, and then just kind of like putting our plugins into the context of what they're already working with instead of being like, this is going to fix all your problems in your life, and without having even listened to them to begin
Yeah.
with about what their problems are.
Yeah. Talk about over promising.
Yeah.
That's going to be very hard to follow up with actual delivery. Um, well, Hannes, this has been so good. Thank you so much for joining today. I've so enjoyed this conversation. It's very interesting, and I feel like there's just kind of so many insights along the way around how you guys have structured, how you price things, how you sell things, how you develop things, how you expanded. Um, Before we wrap up, is there any, if people wanted to connect with oeksound, what's the best way to maybe connect with you or with the company? Where
Yeah.
just go to the website, or what's the best thing for people to do?
So our website is oeksound.com. So that's OEK sound, all in one
Hmm.
word, .com. There you can find our plugins. If you're making
Hmm.
music, you can download the trials there and use them for those 20 days.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell you to buy it because I don't do that. And and and
Yep.
also on socials, it's oeksound, OEK sound on all socials. That's
Cool.
Facebook, X, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter,
All the things.
everything out there. And so that's where you can follow us as well. We're a very small company, so if you send an email to contact@oxsound wanting to speak with me, I will know about it. Or if you
Oh,
send a
nice.
DM, if you send a DM to any one of our social channels, I will know about it. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, just Hannes Andersson there, I will know about it. And so that's the best way to connect with me.
Oh, I love that. And we'll add those in the show notes, of course. Thank you so much, man. I've appreciated this today.
Thank you.
Um, Thanks everyone for joining us on the Growth Stage podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Poliato. Love being able to hang out with you and with the best in the business here on the podcast. Really pumped to have been able to get Hannes on here and talk through kind of their journey. Have a great week, everybody, and catch you on the next one. Cheers.